When the world goes quiet, some voices still remain. Not every soul finds peace when the clock strikes 12. There are stories hidden in the shadows, whispers drifting between the living and the forgotten. Some stories linger, some souls don't leave. Welcome to Stillness After Midnight, where every silence tells a story. If you're drawn to the mysteries that stir after dark, the voices that echo when the world sleeps, subscribe now and join us as we listen to the souls who still have something to say, because in the stillness, the truth finally speaks. I never thought Kyoto could feel so empty. When I first arrived, the city breathed with a quiet rhythm, lanterns swaying above narrow streets, the faint scent of incense drifting from old shrines, and the distant echo of wooden sandals clattering on stone. Yet when I stepped into my sister's rented room, all that remained was silence. Not the comforting kind, but the kind that presses on your ears, making you wonder if the world itself has stopped breathing. Her name was Miyako. She was 22, younger than me by 3 years, gentle yet stubborn in her own way, the kind of person who would laugh at the wind tangling her hair, but glare at me for calling her careless. She had moved to Kyoto half a year earlier, chasing studies in traditional dance and folklore. She wrote me letters sometimes, short, hurried lines about classes, about the old houses she wandered through, about a strange music box she had found at a flea market. That was the last thing she mentioned before she disappeared. The phone call came on a rainy evening. A landlord's trembling voice, words breaking between apologies. "Your sister. She hasn't been seen for 3 days. Her door was locked from the inside. But when we finally entered, she wasn't there." I booked the first train. Her room was on the second floor of an aging wooden building, tucked in a quiet alley. The kind of place where paper doors creak and tatami mats hold the faint scent of dust and time. When I slid open the door, I was met with a stillness that unsettled me. No overturned furniture, no signs of struggle, just absence. The futon lay neatly folded in the corner. A teacup rested on the low table, a ring of dried tea clinging to its rim. Her books were stacked against the wall, mostly notes on performing arts, a few thin volumes on ghost stories and forgotten rituals. And there, on the desk by the window, sat a music box. It was small, lacquered black with delicate floral patterns chipped by age. The metal key stuck out from its side, as if waiting for someone's hand. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared, remembering her last letter, the way her words had carried an odd weight. "Riku, this little box feels alive. Sometimes it hums even when I don't wind it." I should have dismissed it as her usual flights of imagination. Miyako always had a way of romanticizing the uncanny, but now standing in that room where she should have been, the thought tightened around me like a noose. Where had she gone? How could a locked room hold nothing but this silence and that box? I stayed the night, partly because I needed to, partly because I felt I owed her that. The police had done their part, or so they said. Interviews, searches, paperwork stacked neatly into folders. To them, Miyako was another missing person in a city too old to keep track of its ghosts, but I couldn't accept that. As darkness fell, I lit the small lamp on her desk. Its glow washed the room in amber, soft against the wooden walls. Outside, the city hummed faintly. Distant cars, a dog barking, the occasional murmur of footsteps. But inside, the air thickened. I lay on her futon, listening to the stillness, waiting for some sign. My eyes kept wandering to the desk, to that box. The lamp's reflection shimmered on its polished surface, as though the flowers painted there swayed with breath. I told myself not to wind it, not tonight. Yet the longer I resisted, the more the silence pressed, until curiosity edged into fear. It was past midnight when I finally stood. The key felt colder than it should have. My fingers trembled slightly as I twisted it, the old gears grinding faintly in protest. Then the lid clicked open. The melody began soft, a fragile tune, simple, almost childish. Notes rising and falling with a rhythm that should have been comforting. But something was wrong. Beneath the sweetness was a faint dissonance, as though the gears skipped at certain intervals, bending the tune just enough to scrape against the ear. I sat frozen, listening. The room seemed to contract, the air chilling with each note. Shadows clung tighter to the corners. And then, in the window blurred by condensation, a reflection shifted. For an instant I saw her, Miyako, standing behind me, face pale, eyes wide as though she wanted to speak but couldn't. I spun around. Nothing. Only the futon, the lamp, the silence. My breath caught. My pulse thundered in my ears, louder than the music, louder than anything. Yet I couldn't shut the lid. I couldn't stop the melody, as though my hands had turned to stone. When the tune ended, the silence returned, thicker than before. I lowered myself back onto the futon, trembling. I told myself it had been a trick of the light, exhaustion, nerves playing against the shadows. But even as my eyes closed, I knew the room wasn't empty. Something had shifted. The next morning, I walked through Kyoto's streets, searching. People bustled past with umbrellas and bicycles, conversations floating above the patter of rain. None of them knew that the world had tilted, that my sister's absence had pulled me into a place where reflections whispered and silence listened. I visited the police again. They offered sympathy, but little else. "We'll keep investigating," they said, though their eyes already carried resignation. Missing persons rarely returned in neat resolutions, but Miyako wasn't gone. I had felt her presence, heard it in that broken melody. So I returned to her room, and there it was, still on the desk, waiting for me. The music box, its lid closed, its key gleaming faintly in the afternoon light. I realized then, whatever had taken my sister was tied to this box. If I wanted to find her, I would have to stay, to listen, to follow the sound, no matter where it led. And so I remained in that room. Her room, my only anchor in a city now laced with shadows. The search for Miyako had begun. I told myself not to touch the music box again, but some things cling to you, like a shadow you can't peel off, no matter how hard you try. For the rest of that day, I tried to busy myself, walking along the Kamigawa River, weaving through the markets of Nishiki, pausing at shrines where the scent of incense curled upward like whispers. I even found myself standing before the great gates of Kiyomizudera, tourists brushing past me as if I were invisible. But all the while in the back of my mind, I heard it. That tune. It was faint, distorted, as if my ears had been branded by it. Every sound in the city bent toward it. The chime of temple bells, the rustle of rain and bamboo leaves, even the laughter of strangers on the street. Everything carried its echo. By the time I returned to Miyako's room that evening, my resolve had already frayed. The lamp flickered weakly on the desk, casting its pale light over the walls. The box waited where I had left it, patient, silent. I sat on the futon, staring, as though it might open on its own if I lingered long enough. Eventually I rose. My fingers found the key again, and before reason could catch up, I twisted it. The gears clicked, the lid lifted, and once more the melody poured into the room. At first it seemed the same as before, sweet, fragile, but this time I noticed the flaws more sharply. Each note wavered, bending slightly off pitch, like a singer holding back tears. There was beauty in it, but beauty that hurt, beauty that cut. My eyes drifted to the mirror propped against the wall, a plain thing, its wooden frame chipped. I hadn't noticed it much before, but now in the lamplight, it seemed to ripple faintly, as though its surface were water. I froze, because there, in the shimmer of glass, I wasn't alone. At first it was just a blur, a pale shape lingering behind my shoulder. My breath caught, and for a heartbeat I couldn't move. Slowly the shape sharpened, delicate features, long black hair spilling over a white kimono. Her face tilted slightly, eyes dark as ink, lips curved not in a smile but something close to sorrow. I spun around. Nothing. Only the desk, the futon, the low hum of the box. But when I turned back, she was still in the mirror. Closer now. I stumbled back, my chest tightening. Her eyes followed me, unblinking, her presence pressing against my skin like frost. My throat burned with the urge to call out Miyako's name, but the sound never left my lips. The melody faltered, gears catching. Her reflection leaned forward, lips parting. And though the room remained silent, I heard it. A whisper, faint but clear, right behind my ear. You shouldn't have opened it again. I slammed the lid shut. The music stopped abruptly, the silence crashing like a wave. The mirror stilled. The figure dissolved into nothing more than my own reflection, pale and shaking. I pressed both palms against the futon, steadying my breath. My heart rattled like loose shutters in a storm. When I finally dared to glance at the desk again, the box sat motionless, innocent as though nothing had happened. But I knew better now. It wasn't just an object, it was a doorway. Sleep came late, if at all. Every time my eyes closed, I saw her face, the woman in the mirror, pale and watching. Sometimes she wore Miyako's features, sometimes not. Sometimes her lips twisted in grief, other times in a smile too thin to be kind. I drifted in and out of restless dreams, wooden sandals echoing down endless hallways, paper lanterns swaying without wind, a melody that looped and looped, dragging me deeper into its dissonance. When dawn finally broke, I wasn't sure I had slept at all. Over the next few days, I tried to resist. I told myself I would not touch the box again. But temptation is a cunning thing. It waits patient, gnawing at the edges of resolve until it frays to threads. On the third night, I gave in. The melody began again, gentle, broken. My eyes drifted to the mirror, and sure enough, she was there. Not Miyako, not entirely, but a pale imitation. Her gaze seemed to plead and threaten at once. I whispered into the silence, my voice barely steady. Where is she? Where is Miyako? The reflection tilted its head, as if considering whether to answer. The gears clicked, the tune faltered, and then, barely audible, came a response. Behind you. I spun, heart hammering. Nothing. Only the futon, the desk, the shadowed corners of the room. But when I turned back to the mirror, she was gone. That night I left the lamp burning and walked the streets of Kyoto until the sky lightened with dawn. I wandered past shuttered shops and empty alleys, past shrines where fox statues glared with stone eyes. The city felt both alive and vacant, as though every shadow carried the weight of a gaze. When I finally returned, exhausted, I found the box open on its own. Its lid lifted, key unwound, silent now but waiting. And though I hadn't touched it, a single long hair, dark, unmistakably Miyako's, lay across the desk beside it. I didn't know if it was a promise or a warning, but I knew then. This box wasn't finished with me, and neither was she. The morning after I found Miyako's hair beside the music box, I searched the room again. I had combed through it before, every drawer, every folded garment, every stack of notes. Yet something compelled me to start over. Maybe I had missed something. Maybe she had left me a trace too subtle for the police, too personal for anyone else to notice. I slid open the bottom drawer of her desk, the one I had barely glanced at the first time. Beneath a pile of receipts and old ticket stubs, my fingers brushed something soft. A worn notebook, its cover bent, corners frayed. The faint smell of ink and dust clung to it. Miyako's handwriting greeted me the moment I opened it. Slanted letters, uneven strokes, her familiar script, always hurried as if she wrote faster than her thoughts. The first pages were ordinary, notes about her classes, her friends, places she had visited, sketches of shrine gates, kimono patterns, even rough drawings of lanterns swaying in the wind. Reading them, I could almost hear her voice, quick and breathless. The way she would talk when excitement outpaced her breathing. But as I turned the pages, the tone shifted. She wrote of the music box. The entry was dated only weeks before her disappearance. I bought it from a street stall near Pontacho. The seller was an old man with cloudy eyes. He told me it once belonged to a geisha, long gone. I thought it was beautiful, though chipped and cracked. When I wound it that first night, the melody felt alive, like it had been waiting. The next page bore a hurried scrawl. Something strange happens when I play it. Reflections don't stay still. I see movements behind me, but when I turn, no one's there. At first I laughed it off, but last night I swear someone whispered my name. My hands trembled as I turned another page. Every time the box plays, I feel a presence. A girl in white, long hair, watching. Sometimes I think she smiles. Sometimes I think she weeps. She's always behind me, in the mirror, in the glass. I don't know what she wants. The ink blurred in places, as if written with a shaking hand. I'm scared. I tried to stop winding it, but even then, sometimes it opens on its own. I shut the notebook for a moment, pressing my palm against its worn cover. My chest ached. Reading her fear was like hearing her voice break across time, a plea reaching me too late. Still, I forced myself to continue. Toward the back, her writing became frantic. Lines scratched over each other. Words slanted almost violently. I can't sleep. The music plays even in silence. Shadows stretch longer than they should. Every reflection hides her. She's closer each night. And then one entry, shorter than the rest, almost torn into the page. There is always someone standing behind me when the music plays. The last few lines were a mess of scribbles, crossed out and rewritten, as if she couldn't finish the thought. Ink smudged under her hand, leaving only fragments. Trade, mirror, not me. The final page was blank. I sat for a long time, staring at those words. The lamp flickered, the faint hum of traffic outside drifted in, but all I heard was that sentence echoing in my skull. There is always someone standing behind me when the music plays. A chill crawled up my spine. I turned toward the mirror against the wall. Its surface was dull, warped slightly at the edges, reflecting only my hunched figure, pale and tired. Yet even then, I couldn't shake the sensation, the weight of unseen eyes pressing on the back of my neck. That night, I left the notebook open on the desk beside the box. I sat cross-legged on the tatami, the lamp casting long shadows across the room. The silence was thick, waiting. I wound the key. The melody started, fragile as ever, broken and sweet. I kept my eyes on the notebook, as if Miyako's words might anchor me. The gears clicked, the notes faltered, and from the corner of my vision, the mirror stirred. I refused to look directly. My breath came shallow, heart pounding. The music wavered, twisting into a shape almost like weeping. And then, in the silence between notes, I heard it. A voice, faint, trembling. Riku. My head snapped up. It was her voice, Miyako's. I stumbled toward the mirror, desperate. Her face flickered there, pale, distant, eyes wide with fear. Her lips moved, though I could barely catch the words. She's not me. Don't. The melody lurched. The image shattered. And once again, I stood staring at only myself. I collapsed into the futon, clutching the notebook to my chest. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but none fell. It felt wrong to cry when the room itself seemed to listen, when shadows leaned closer with each breath. Sleep found me only after exhaustion dragged me under. In my dreams, I saw her again. Miyako, sitting cross-legged on tatami, her hair spilling over her shoulders as she brushed it slowly. Behind her stood another figure, draped in white, smiling with lips too thin, too cold. Their eyes met mine, and in that dream, I couldn't tell which one was my sister. When I woke, strands of long black hair lay across my pillow. Not mine. The diary remained open on the desk, waiting, its words etched into me like wounds. If Miyako had been caught in something beyond this world, then so was I now. And the box, The box had only just begun its song. There is a kind of silence that no city can conceal. Even in Kyoto, where streets hum with the low chatter of bars and the rhythm of footsteps past midnight, I felt it. A silence that seeps into the bones, lingering behind every sound like a shadow too patient to move. I carried Miyako's notebook with me everywhere now. It was my anchor, proof that what I saw wasn't madness alone. Each word she wrote blurred with my own memories, until I wasn't sure where her fear ended and mine began. But one thing was certain. The figure in the mirror was real, and she wasn't content to remain there. It began small, a glimpse in the corner of my eye, her pale outlines sliding through the reflection of the window as I passed. At first I convinced myself it was nothing, an echo of street lamps, the blur of strangers. Yet even in daylight I caught her. On the bus, as glass doors hissed shut, her form leaned near my shoulder. In the blank screen of my phone before it lit up, a flicker of white hovered behind me, and always the same sensation, a breath colder than winter pressing against the back of my neck. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was exhaustion, grief, anything. But one evening, as rain streaked the window of Miyako's room, I finally looked too long. The box sat open on the desk, though I hadn't wound it. Its lid tilted upward, its gears still. I stared at it, pulse quickening. The lamp flickered once, shadows shivering across the walls. And in the mirror, she stood, clearer than ever. Her kimono glowed pale, its sleeves heavy, swaying though the air was still. Long hair clung to her face, black strands veiling features too delicate, too sharp. Her eyes fixed on mine through the glass, unblinking, endless. I turned, desperate to catch her in the room itself. Nothing. But the moment I faced the mirror again, she was closer. I stumbled back, my breath fogged in the sudden chill. Her lips curved, not into kindness, but into something thin, stretched, a mimicry of a smile. And then she leaned forward, her face so near the glass that I swore it should fog with her breath. I couldn't move. My body was stone. Then with a sickening slowness, her hand rose. Pale fingers pressed against the mirror's surface from inside. The glass rippled. I staggered, my shoulder knocking against the desk. The lamp wavered violently, throwing the room into fractured light. The box shuddered. And though no hand touched it, the gears whined, turning. The melody crept out again, twisted, off-key, each note a blade against the skin. In the mirror, her hands slid downward, fingers leaving streaks of frost across the glass. Her mouth moved, shaping words I couldn't hear. I forced myself to whisper, my throat raw. "What do you want?" Her eyes widened, sharp with hunger. The music faltered, and then she spoke. Not through the mirror, not in my ears, but behind me. "To take your place." I spun, a cry tearing out of me. Nothing. Only the lamp flickering, the box grinding, the air colder than ice. But I knew she was there. I felt her breath on my skin. With trembling hands, I slammed the lid shut. The melody choked. The mirror stilled. Her figure dissolved into my reflection, pale and broken. My knees buckled. I pressed my forehead to the tatami, gasping. For long minutes I couldn't rise, every nerve wired with the certainty that if I looked up, she would be standing behind me. When at last I dared lift my head, the room was still. Only the box sat silent, its black lacquer gleaming faintly in the lamplight. But I knew better. It was only waiting. Days blurred after that. I avoided mirrors, but reflections are treacherous things. They hide in every surface. Shop windows, train doors, the sheen of rainwater pooling on stone. Each time I caught her, just long enough to doubt whether I had seen her at all, long enough to dread when she might appear next. Sleep became a stranger. The few hours I managed brought only dreams of Miyako, her face half shrouded by the woman in white. Sometimes she whispered to me. Sometimes she only stared. Always she was slipping further away, her voice drowned beneath that fractured melody. I began to wonder if Miyako was trapped in the glass itself, if her pleas were the echoes I heard, and worse. I began to wonder if she had already traded places. One evening, I sat with the notebook open before me, searching the lines for guidance. Her words seemed clearer now, as if they had been waiting for me to understand. There is always someone standing behind me when the music plays. I read it again and again, my own neck prickling with phantom breath. Then beneath the lamp's glow, I noticed something I hadn't before, a faint indentation on the page, words written so hard they pressed through the paper. Tilting the notebook, I caught it in the light. It's not me in the mirror. My stomach turned. I shoved the notebook shut, heart pounding. The box rattled faintly on the desk, though untouched. The mirror across the room shimmered. I turned toward it against every instinct. And there, she waited. This time her lips were not silent. They moved slowly, deliberately, forming a single word. Miyako. The soundless cry tore through me. I staggered forward, palms pressing to the mirror's surface. Cold bit into my skin. My breath fogged the glass, mingling with hers. For a heartbeat, I swore I felt another hand press against mine from the other side. Smaller, familiar, Miyako's. But then the woman in white leaned forward, swallowing the space between us, and her smile widened into something that promised no return. The melody began again, though the box remained closed, and in the silence of that cursed room, I understood. The glass was no longer a barrier, it was a doorway, and she was already stepping through. There is a kind of desperation that creeps in when you realize you cannot face something alone. For nights I had endured the box, the mirror, the shadow pressing against my skin. But even fear has limits, and mine had been stretched to the breaking point. I needed someone who had known Miyako, someone who could remind me that she had once belonged to the living world, not only to the shadowed one behind the glass. Her closest friend in Kyoto was Sayuri. Miyako had written of her often in the early pages of the notebook. Sayuri had been her confidant, her partner in wandering the alleys of Gion, attending late-night performances, slipping into forgotten tea houses that locals warned carried ghosts. Miyako always described her as bold, unafraid of places others avoided. If anyone could help me trace what had happened, it would be her. I found Sayuri's address in the back of the notebook, a narrow street in Higashiyama lined with weathered wooden homes. Lanterns hung from eaves, their paper thin with age, casting dim circles of light onto the stone path. When I arrived, the door was shut tight. Dusk gathered at its edges. The air felt strangely still, as though the house itself had not been opened for weeks. I knocked. No answer. I called her name softly. Silence. Finally, I asked the neighbor sweeping outside. An old woman, stooped with age, her broom pausing mid-air when she heard me. Sayuri, she echoed, her eyes narrowing. Then she shook her head slowly. She's gone. My chest tightened. Gone? Where? The woman's gaze drifted toward the shuttered windows of Sayuri's house. Her voice lowered as though afraid to be overheard. She vanished, just like your sister. The words struck me like a blade. 2 disappearances, both tied to Miyako. I pressed further, though my voice trembled. When? Days ago, maybe more. She stopped answering. The police came, but they don't stay long here. Too many whispers. Whispers. The words sank like lead into my stomach. The old woman's eyes darted toward the windows again. Strange things, they say, happen in that room. Lights flicker when no lamp is lit. Glass cracks without touch. I thanked her, though my voice sounded hollow, and she turned quickly away, as though eager to retreat from the conversation. The door to Sayuri's house yielded under my hand. It was unlocked, the air stale and heavy with dust. Inside, the tatami mats bore faint footprints, leading toward the bedroom. I stepped carefully, every board beneath me groaning with age. The silence pressed closer with each breath, broken only by the faint hiss of wind against the shutters. Her room was almost bare. A futon folded neatly, a few clothes hung in the corner. But what drew my eyes immediately was the mirror. Tall, cracked down one side. The glass bore long scratches, as if raked by something sharp. At its base lay strands of dark hair, twisted together like offerings. I knelt, reaching out to touch one. The chill that leapt up my arm made me recoil. The hair wasn't Sayuri's. It was too long, too heavy. It was Miyako's. My breath faltered. I stumbled back from the mirror, my pulse hammering. The crack across the glass shimmered faintly in the dim light, as though something beneath strained to break free. I remembered Miyako's words in her diary. There is always someone standing behind me when the music plays. Sayuri had seen it too. She must have. And like Miyako, she had been taken. The air grew colder. I felt it then. The presence. Not in the room itself, but in the reflection. I dared a glance. In the broken glass, her outline stood behind me. The woman in white. Only this time she was not alone. Beside her, bound in strands of hair, was Sayuri. Her face pale, eyes wide with terror, lips moving soundlessly. I staggered closer, desperate to hear her. My hands pressed against the cracked glass. Sayuri! Sayuri! Can you hear me? Her eyes darted to mine, pleading. Her mouth formed a single word. Run! The crack deepened. A high, shrill sound filled the air, as if the glass itself was screaming. I tore my hands away, stumbling back toward the door. Behind me, I heard the faintest melody. The box had followed me here. I fled into the street, the door slamming shut behind me. My chest heaved, lungs burning as the night swallowed me whole. Lanterns swayed in the wind, their glow flickering weakly against the dark. The box weighed in my bag, though I hadn't placed it there. It had followed, just as Miyako's hair had followed, just as the reflection followed. Sayuri was gone. The mirror had claimed her, just as it had claimed Miyako. And now it wanted me. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in Miyako's room, staring at the box. Its lacquered surface gleamed faintly in the lamplight, as though amused by my fear. I opened the notebook again, flipping to the last frantic pages. Her words blurred with mine now, our voices merging across the divide. It's not me in the mirror. There is always someone standing behind me when the music plays. Not me, not me. I pressed the pen into the page, adding my own trembling line. Sayuri is gone too. The glass has taken her. The box rattled faintly, as if in answer, and somewhere in the silence I heard her laughter. Soft, broken, curling around me like smoke. Not Miyako's, not Sayuri's, but hers, the woman in white. Sleep became a treacherous thing. Every night I fought it, lighting incense, pacing Miyako's small room until dawn, hoping the exhaustion would keep the shadows away. Yet no matter how long I resisted, when sleep finally took me, it pulled me into the same place, a room of tatami soaked in blood. The first night it came, I woke trembling, telling myself it had only been a dream. But when it returned the next, and the next after that, I began to wonder if it was something more. The room was always the same, shoji doors closed tight, tatami mats dark and swollen as if they had drunk too much. The smell of iron hung heavy, coppery, choking. And there in the center, Miyako sat, her back straight, her hair falling in long, glossy strands. She held a wooden comb in one hand, dragging it slowly through her hair. Each stroke made a sound sharp as snapping twigs, though her expression never wavered. Behind her, the woman in white stood, always smiling. The first time I couldn't move. My feet were nailed to the mats, my voice stolen. I could only watch, my heart breaking as Miyako's movements repeated. Endless, mechanical, as if she were a doll wound too tightly. The woman's gaze turned to me. She tilted her head slightly, as though amused I had stumbled into her private theater. And then she smiled wider, lips parting just enough to reveal the faintest trace of teeth. I woke with a start, and on my pillow, a single strand of black hair. The following night, the dream deepened. I stood in the same room, though this time I could move. My legs shook as I stepped forward, tatami squelching beneath me. Miyako lifted her head. Her eyes were hollow, yet when they met mine, something flickered. Recognition or plea, I couldn't tell. Her lips moved, but no sound reached me. I shouted her name. The word vanished into silence, swallowed by the walls. Behind her, the woman's pale hands reached forward, settling gently on Miyako's shoulders. She leaned close, whispering into my sister's ear. Miyako's body stiffened. The comb slipped from her fingers, clattering against the floor. And then, in perfect unison, they turned their heads toward me. Two pairs of eyes, one empty, one endless, both fixed on mine. I woke gasping, sweat chilling my skin. The pillow beside me bore not just one strand of hair, but many, long, twisted, unfamiliar. By the fourth night, I feared closing my eyes at all, but exhaustion is merciless. I slipped back into the dream as though it had been waiting for me. The room was darker now. Shadows pressed thick against the shoji doors, as if something outside leaned heavily against them. The tatami bled with each step I took, staining my bare feet red. Miyako knelt in the center, combing her hair again, slower this time. Her lips trembled. When she looked up at me, her face shifted. For a moment, she was herself, my sister, eyes wide with fear. Then, as though a veil had been dropped, her features warped into the woman's. The comb snapped in her hand. I froze, heart hammering. The woman's laugh spilled from Miyako's mouth, low and sweet. She rose to her feet, moving with a grace too smooth, too deliberate. Her kimono trailed behind. Though Miyako's body wore no kimono at all, she stepped closer. The smile widened. "Come closer, Riku," she whispered, though her lips didn't move. I stumbled back, colliding with the wall. The shoji doors shuddered, their paper surface bulging outward, as if countless hands pressed from the other side. Fingers tore through, pale and long, clawing at the air. I screamed and woke to find scratches on my arm, thin, shallow, like fingernails. After that, I stopped pretending it was just a dream. Every detail lingered too vividly: the smell of blood, the weight of her gaze, the sting of scratches that hadn't been there before. The line between waking and dreaming had dissolved. Miyako was trapped in that room, or something wearing her skin was. And each night, the woman pulled me closer. I began to dread sleep more than death. I searched temples by day, hoping to find answers. Priests offered blessings, charms, words of comfort. But none looked me in the eye for long. Some flinched when I asked about spirits and mirrors, about women in white kimono. One elderly priest, his back bent with years, finally whispered, "There are dreams that are not dreams. When blood stains the tatami in visions, it means the spirit has already entered your home." I wanted to laugh at the simplicity of his words, but I couldn't, because I already knew. Each morning I woke to more strands of hair, more scratches. Each night the room welcomed me back, as though I belonged there. And each time Miyako's voice grew fainter, while the woman's smile grew sharper. One night I tried to resist. I lit every candle in the room, incense burning thick. I sat upright, clutching Miyako's notebook, forcing my eyes open against the weight of exhaustion. But sometime past midnight, the box clicked open on its own. The melody began, fragile, distorted, pulling me under like a tide. My vision swam, the candles guttered, and when I blinked, I was back on the tatami, the blood soaking my feet. This time Miyako turned to me immediately. Her face was hers again, her eyes wide with desperate clarity. She mouthed a word I finally understood. "Help!" Before I could move, the woman's pale hand rose from behind her, pressing against Miyako's lips, silencing her. The smile stretched wide across that white face, and her eyes locked onto mine. The comb, slick with blood, fell to the tatami. I woke screaming. On the floor beside my futon lay the comb. Wooden, old, stained dark. By then, I knew the truth I had tried to avoid. The dreams were not invitations, they were rehearsals. Each night, the woman blurred the line further, pulling me closer to the room of tatami and blood. And each morning, the remnants followed me back. A comb, strands of hair, scratches on my skin. She was building a bridge, and soon I would not wake at all. The more the dreams clawed into me, the more I realized I couldn't keep circling inside Miyako's room like an insect trapped in a lantern's glow. I needed answers, not the vague mutterings of priests who averted their eyes, not neighbors whispering about vanishing girls. Something, or someone, must know where this cursed music box came from. The memory returned to me from Miyako's diary, a single note, almost casual. I bought it from a street stall near Pontocho. The seller was an old man with cloudy eyes. That was where I began. Pontocho is a place of narrow shadows and narrow lights, a thin street that runs along the Kamogawa, lanterns swaying above wooden facades, women in silk kimonos drifting like ghosts between restaurants and tea houses. By day it is quiet, by night it hums with a beauty sharp as a blade. I walked it 3 nights in a row searching. I asked stall owners, performers, even drunk patrons spilling out into the street. None admitted to knowing an old blind man selling trinkets. It was on the 4th night, when the air turned heavy with rain, that I found him. His stall was barely more than a wooden table pushed into the shadows between 2 larger shops. No lantern lit it. Only when I passed close did I see the faint outline of objects scattered there. Battered fans, lacquered boxes, chipped porcelain dolls with eyes that refused to close. And him, the old man. His eyes were clouded white, blind, yet they turned toward me as if he had been waiting. His mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. "You've brought it back," he rasped before I spoke a word. My blood froze. "The box?" His hands, gnarled with age, brushed the air. "It found you. It always finds someone." I swallowed hard, my voice shaking. "My sister bought it from you, Miyako. She's gone." At the name, he tilted his head, listening to the rain. Then he nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. "She is with her," he said softly, "with Akane." The name chilled me, though I had never heard it before. "Who is Akane?" The old man's fingers traced the edge of the table, brushing past the dolls and fans, posing over a small cracked mirror. A geisha, once radiant, once envied. 100 years ago, she loved a man who promised her the world, but left her with nothing. Betrayal is a cruel seed. It grows into curses that last lifetimes. He turned his blind eyes toward me. They found her in her own home, white kimono stained red, hair spilling across the tatami. She was not buried with honor. They whispered her spirit clung to a trinket left behind. My heart hammered. "The box." He nodded slow. "Yes, the music she once danced to, twisted now, hungry." I clenched my fists. "Then how do I stop it? How do I free my sister?" The old man's lips pressed thin. For a long moment he said nothing, as though weighing whether the truth was a cruelty I could bear. Finally he spoke. "You cannot. You can only bargain." The words struck me like a blade. "Bargain?" I forced myself to ask. "What kind of bargain?" His sightless eyes seemed to pierce me anyway. "The music box opens doors. Each time it plays, the mirror thins. But when you wind it 3 times in one night, the door no longer closes. The girl in white steps through, and you step in her place." My breath caught. So that's what happened to Miyako. He tilted his head again, listening to the rain. Perhaps, or perhaps she resisted too long and was bound inside instead. There is always a trade. The box does not play for free. The words twisted in me, sickening. I thought of Miyako brushing her hair in the bloody tatami dream, lips moving in pleas I could not hear. I thought of Sayuri, pale and bound in strands of hair inside the cracked mirror. The old man's voice grew low, almost pitying. "Do not wind it 3 times, boy. Not unless you are ready to lose yourself." I wanted to demand more, to shake him, force him to tell me how to undo what had been done. But his hands had already folded into his lap, his blind eyes turned inward. "The box chooses," he whispered. "It chose her. It has chosen you. The more you fight, the deeper it digs. Leave Kyoto. Bury it far from mirrors. Pray you are strong enough to forget." I staggered back, rage and despair twisting inside me. Forget? Leave? As if I could. Miyako was still there, somewhere beyond the glass. I turned from him, stepping into the rain-slick street, heart pounding. Behind me, his stall seemed to fade into shadow, swallowed by the night. When I looked back, he was gone. That night, back in Miyako's room, the words haunted me. When you wind it 3 times in one night, you are no longer yourself. The box sat on the desk, gleaming faintly, almost mocking. I lit the lamp and set Miyako's notebook beside it. My hands shook as I wrote my own line beneath hers. "I will not play it 3 times. I will not give her that doorway." The box rattled once as if in laughter, and then, without my hand, the key turned. The melody began. I froze, terror clutching my throat. The first notes sang out, fragile, bending. The air chilled. In the mirror, the woman appeared again. Her kimono trailed into shadow, her eyes endless. Behind her, Miyako's face flickered, lips moving soundlessly. The tune faltered, then caught again. Stronger. One time. The lid slammed shut on its own. Moments later, it opened again. The key spun, gears grinding. The melody rose a second time. 2. My chest tightened. My hands shot forward, but the box slid away across the desk, as if pulled by invisible hands. In the mirror, the woman smiled. She raised a pale finger to her lips, silencing me. The melody wound down. Silence. The key shivered, trembling. I whispered Miyako's name, voice breaking. And then, with a sound sharp as bone snapping, the lid flew open once more. The third song began. The third melody should never have played. The blind seller's warning rang in my ears. When you wind it 3 times in one night, you are no longer yourself. Yet the box had ignored me, ignored my will, and chosen. The song rose thin and piercing. Each note stretched until it bent against the walls like a scream muffled by distance. I clutched the desk, my knuckles white, as though the wood might keep me tethered to the room. In the mirror, she stepped closer. The woman in white no longer drifted like a shadow. She stood solid, her reflection as clear as my own, kimono trailing across unseen tatami. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I felt her presence not behind the glass, but inside the room itself. The air thickened. My breath clouded in front of me, though no window was open. The smell of old incense and iron filled my throat. And then, a whisper brushed my ear. "Miyako!" I spun, desperate, but found nothing. The mirror caught my frantic motion, and in it I saw her again. Miyako, trapped behind the woman's pale shoulder, lips moving in frantic silence. Her eyes met mine, wide with terror, begging. I slammed the lid shut. The melody died mid-note, leaving silence so heavy it crushed my chest. But the box rattled, and when I turned away for only a moment, it was no longer on the desk. It was on the futon. I recoiled, every nerve screaming. My hands shook as I grabbed it, bolting down the stairs and into the street. The night air struck me like a wave, damp with rain, thick with the scent of earth and stone. I ran, past lantern-lit alleys, past shuttered shops, past the river that gleamed black under the moon. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the city. There, among trees that pressed close like watchers, I hurled the box into the darkness. It vanished into the undergrowth with a dull thud. My chest heaved. Relief surged through me, thin and trembling. I wiped the sweat from my brow and staggered back toward the city. For one fragile moment, I believed I had escaped. But when I returned to Miyako's room, the box sat on the desk, its lid shut, its key gleaming faintly, waiting. I collapsed against the wall, my body numb. It had followed me. No, worse, it had never left. The next night I tried again. I wrapped it in cloth and buried it under the stones of the Kamagawa's bank, pressing mud over it until my fingers bled. I whispered Miyako's name as though she might feel my defiance, but when I slid open the door of her room, the box rested neatly on her pillow. I threw it from the bridge at Sanjo, watching the current swallow it whole. The river churned, swallowing the lacquered black wood. My chest lightened for the first time in days. Yet when I returned, the box sat inside my bag, dripping water across the tatami. No matter where I cast it, into shrines, into alley fires, into the hands of priests too afraid to keep it, it returned. Always to me, always in her room. It wanted me bound. I stopped trying. My days blurred into restless wandering, my nights into an endless vigil. I ate little, spoke to no one. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of the tatami soaked in blood, Miyako combing her hair, the woman in white smiling behind her. The diary lay open beside me, the last lines trembling beneath my fingertips. Not me, not me. I began to add my own words in frantic scrawls. It won't leave. It follows. It waits. Sometimes when I woke, new words appeared that I hadn't written. Thin, sharp letters unlike Miyako's or mine. Trade. Choose. The mirrors became worse. At first it had been glimpses, her shadow behind me, her face leaning close. Now I could not glance at glass without seeing her. In shop windows she smiled faintly. In puddles her face rippled near mine. In the blank screen of my phone, her eyes gleamed from the darkness. Even when I shattered the mirror in Miyako's room, the shards sang with her reflection, hundreds of tiny eyes staring back at me. I swept them away trembling, but in the lamplight I swore I heard faint laughter curling from the cracks. One night, exhausted, I whispered into the silence, "What do you want from me?" The box shivered. The lid opened without a hand. The melody began, soft, mocking, and from behind me came her voice. "To take your place." I turned, but the room was empty. Only the mirror shimmered faintly, and in it, the woman stood just behind me, her pale fingers already reaching for my shoulder. I slammed the lid closed, heart hammering, but the words lingered. To take your place. I began to understand then. The box would never let me go. No matter where I ran, it would return. No matter how tightly I closed my eyes, the melody would find me. And soon I would stand where Miyako stood, comb in hand, hair spilling across tatami, and she would stand where I had been. That night I dreamed again of the blood-soaked room, but this time Miyako did not sit alone. I was there too, kneeling opposite her, and behind us both, the woman in white smiled. The night it happened, the rain fell so hard that Kyoto itself seemed to drown. Lanterns guttered, their light quivering in the downpour. Water rushed down the narrow alleys, carrying with it leaves, fragments of paper, forgotten offerings washed from shrine steps. And in Miyako's room, the box stirred. I hadn't touched it. I swore to myself I wouldn't. But as the storm raged outside, the lid lifted with a slow, deliberate creak. The key spun on its own. The first note rose, thin and sharp. I froze where I sat on the futon, breath shallow, every instinct screaming to flee. But flight was impossible. The sound anchored me, winding chains around my body that no strength could break. The melody bent, notes shivering against one another. The air thickened, damp with the smell of mildew and iron. Shadows quivered along the walls, though no wind touched the lamp. And in the mirror she appeared, the woman in white. Her kimono trailed into darkness, her hair slick against her face, as though she too stood beneath the rain. Her eyes gleamed black, endless, hungry. But she wasn't alone. Miyako stood behind her, her face pale, her mouth opening and closing in frantic silence. Each time her lips moved, the woman's pale hand rose, pressing against them, silencing her. I lurched forward, reaching for the mirror. Miyako! The melody cracked, gears grinding. The woman's head tilted, her smile stretching thin. She leaned so close to the glass that her breath fogged its surface. And then, for the first time, she spoke aloud. Your turn. I stumbled back, my spine hitting the wall. The melody faltered, then surged louder, faster, as if eager to consume the room. The woman's pale fingers pressed harder against the glass. The mirror rippled. I felt it then. A pull, like a tide tugging at my skin, dragging me forward. My reflection distorted, warping into her grin. I fought it, dug my nails into the tatami, gasping, but each note burrowed deeper into my skull, weaving into my heartbeat, my breath. And then I heard it, a voice faint but clear, woven into the melody itself. Riku, help me. Miyako's voice. I forced myself forward, hands slamming against the mirror. It was cold, biting, yet soft as water beneath my palms. For a moment I swore I touched her. My sister's fingers brushed mine through the surface. Tears stung my eyes. Miyako, hold on! I won't let her! But the woman's hand swept hers aside, pale and cruel. She pressed her face to the glass, lips parting. Come with me. The pull strengthened. My body leaned despite me, my chest almost colliding with the mirror. The melody shrieked, splitting into a dozen voices, each one whispering, pleading, mocking. The lamp shattered. Darkness swallowed the room. And in that darkness, she was no longer only in the glass. She stood behind me. Her breast slid cold along the back of my neck. I froze, my skin prickling. Slowly, with dread heavy as stone, I turned. There she was, closer than ever. Her kimono brushed the tatami, soaked and heavy. Her face hovered inches from mine, eyes wide, mouth stretched into a smile that promised endings. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My throat was locked. She leaned close, her lips brushing my ear. Miyako, she whispered. The melody cut off. Silence. Thicker than the storm, heavier than breath. When I dared look, the woman was gone. The mirror reflected only me, trembling and pale. The box sat closed on the desk, its key still. But the silence wasn't empty, it was waiting. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat with Miyako's diary clutched in my hands, staring at the mirror, waiting for it to stir. But the hours dragged, and only the storm kept me company. By dawn, I thought perhaps it had been a trick, a hallucination born of sleepless nights, until I noticed the words. On the diary's last page, where only blank paper had been, fresh ink glistened. One more melody, only one soul may leave. My stomach turned. The letters weren't Miyako's, they weren't mine, they belonged to her. For days after, I wandered Kyoto in a haze. Shrines, alleys, forgotten houses, each step heavier than the last. Everywhere I went, reflections betrayed me. The woman smiling from puddles, from windows, from the sheen of metal spoons in tea houses. I began to avoid looking at anything that could reflect, yet the sensation of breath behind me never left. Each time I turned, nothing. Each time I faced forward, her presence pressed closer. It was no longer about whether she would take me, it was when. One night, exhausted, I returned to the room and collapsed on the futon. I woke not in the room, but in the tatami dream. Miyako sat combing her hair, lips trembling with soundless words. The woman in white stood behind her, smiling. But this time, when Miyako lifted her eyes to me, she shook her head violently. Her lips formed one word. No. The woman's pale hands gripped her shoulders, forcing her still. Her gaze turned to me, hungry. And then, the melody began to play in the dream itself, winding from nowhere, tightening around me like chains. I woke to find the box open on the desk, its gears still turning. The blind seller's words returned. When you wind it 3 times in one night, you are no longer yourself. I hadn't wound it. The box had chosen, and now it was playing on its own. The third melody had begun, but the last had yet to come. The diary gave me no more answers. The blind seller had vanished like mist. The priests at the temples turned their eyes away, muttering prayers under their breath rather than face my questions. But one phrase clung to me, whispered by the old man the last time I saw him. She was found in her own home. Akane, the geisha who had died 100 years ago, the woman in white. If her story had bled into the music box, if her rage had wound itself into its gears, then somewhere her house must still exist. And perhaps within those rotting walls the truth waited. Finding it was not simple. The city had buried her name under layers of silence. Ask anyone on the street, and they would shrug, laugh nervously, change the subject. Some pretended not to hear at all. But late one night, in a small izakaya near Gion, I overheard two men speaking in hushed tones over cups of sake. Their words drifted like embers. The house by the cedar grove. No one dares step past its gate. Her song, they say, still carries through the walls at midnight. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening, and when they noticed me, their faces blanched. One muttered a quick excuse, leaving his drink untouched. The other warned me with a trembling voice, "Do not go there. If you hear her song, it means she has already seen you." But I had already been seen. The directions led me to the outskirts of Kyoto, where streets thinned into forest paths. The cedar trees rose high, their needles black against a moonless sky. The wind moaned through them like voices speaking in unison. And there it was, the forgotten house. Its wooden frame leaned with age, beams sagging as though bowing under the weight of silence. The gate sagged open, covered in moss. Paper lanterns, torn and rotting, still dangled from the eaves, though no light had touched them in decades. I stood at the threshold, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but Miyako's face haunted me, pale and desperate behind the glass. I couldn't leave, not now. I stepped through the gate. The air shifted. The forest fell silent. Even the wind held its breath. Inside, the house reeked of mold and dust. Tatami mats curled upward, brittle beneath my weight. Cobwebs veiled the corners, glimmering faintly in the thin light seeping through broken shoji screens. But what drew my eye immediately was the portrait. It hung in the main room, framed in cracked lacquer, its colors faded yet still sharp enough to wound. A woman in white kimono, her hair long, her gaze direct. Akane. Her face was unmistakable. The same features that had smiled at me from mirrors, the same eyes that had followed me through glass and shadow. But worse, her face was Miyako's. The resemblance was uncanny, as if they were the same woman born in different centuries. The curve of the lips, the slope of the nose, even the tilt of the eyes. It was as though the portrait had been waiting for my sister all along. My breath stuttered. I reached for the frame, but the wood splintered under my touch, crumbling into dust. The canvas sagged, revealing something scrawled beneath in faded ink. 3 characters, old kanji, their strokes violent, carved rather than painted. Jo, curse. Jing, mirror. T, replace. Curse, mirror. Replace. My stomach turned. From somewhere deeper in the house, a sound stirred. Faint at first, a woman's voice humming, soft, lilting, mournful. A song. The melody carried down the dark hallway, wrapping around me with an intimacy that froze my veins. I knew the tune before I recognized it. It was the same broken lullaby the music box sang, but fuller, richer, dripping with sorrow. My feet moved before I could stop them. Each step on the brittle tatami echoed too loudly, as though the house itself listened. The hallway stretched impossibly long, shadows curling against the walls. At its end, a door stood half open. Light flickered within, orange and dim, as though from a dying lantern. I pushed it open. The room was small, yet the air pressed heavy. A low table sagged in the center, its surface scarred. A comb lay across it, identical to the one I had woken beside after the tatami dream. And against the far wall stood a mirror, tall, unbroken. Its surface rippled faintly in the lamplight, as though stirred by invisible breath. I approached, heart pounding. My reflection wavered, and then hers appeared. Akane. She stepped forward in the glass, white kimono glowing, hair falling like ink. Her smile spread, delicate and merciless. Behind her, Miyako struggled. Pale arms reached toward me, her mouth open in a silent scream. Strands of hair wound around her wrists, pulling her back into the dark. I pressed my hands against the glass, tears burning. Miyako! Her lips shaped my name. Akane leaned close, her mouth almost touching the surface. Her voice spilled out, smooth as silk and sharp as razors. Trade places, Riku. Give yourself, and she will be free. My breath faltered. The words wrapped around me, binding tighter than chains. Trade. Replace. The kanji scrawled behind the portrait seared in my memory. I staggered back, my chest heaving. No! I can't! Akane's laughter curled through the room, soft and poisonous. You will, or you will watch her vanish into me forever. The mirror shimmered. Miyako's face contorted, her eyes wide with terror, her mouth opening in a soundless plea. The comb on the table rattled, spinning slowly. The lantern flickered, its flame guttering, and the melody began again. Not from the box this time, from the walls themselves. The house was singing. I dropped to my knees, hands clutching my skull as the tune tore through me. The tatami darkened beneath me, as though soaked once more in blood. My reflection warped in the mirror, twisting into Akane's grin. Miyako reached for me, her eyes wild. Akane's voice slithered through the song. Only one of you leaves. The walls shook. Dust rained from the beams above. The lantern burst, plunging the room into shadow. And in that shadow, her pale hands reached out of the glass. Sleep no longer belonged to me. It belonged to her. Even when I tried to keep my eyes open until dawn, exhaustion betrayed me. I would blink only once, and when they opened again, I was no longer in Miyako's room. I was in the forgotten house. The first night I sleepwalked there, I didn't even realize it. I woke to the smell of damp wood, to the creak of boards sagging beneath me. My body had carried me through the rain, through the forest path, through the sagging gate without memory of the journey. I stood inside the house, the mirror waiting. Akane's face gleamed in its depths, pale as moonlight. Her hands rested gently on Miyako's shoulders, binding her in place. My sister's lips trembled. Riku? I rushed forward, palms slamming against the glass. Cold bit deep, freezing my skin. Miyako pressed from the other side, her eyes wide with terror. Akane leaned forward, her voice curling into my ear, though her lips never moved. Switch. One stays, one leaves. Choose. I tore away, stumbling back, gasping. The boards beneath me groaned. The whole house seemed to tilt, as if waiting for my answer. I can't, I whispered. My throat ached. She's my sister. Take me instead. For a moment, silence. Then Akane's smile widened. Her voice slithered into the air, low and patient. So be it. The mirror rippled. The tatami beneath my feet bled dark. I felt my legs weaken, as though the floor itself wanted to swallow me. I screamed, wrenching myself awake. I bolted upright on Miyako's futon, drenched in sweat, lungs heaving. My hands burned with frost, though no glass had touched them, but mud clung to my feet. I had walked to that house in my sleep. The second night, it happened again. I tried chaining the door shut. I bound my ankle with cord, tying it to the leg of the desk. I thought that might keep me tethered, but when my eyes opened, the cord hung loose, untied as though fingers had undone it with care. The house loomed around me once more. Akane's reflection waited. This time, Miyako didn't plead. She only wept silently, strands of hair plastered across her pale face. Her wrists were bound by threads of shadow, pulling her deeper into the mirror's dark. Akane's smile sharpened. She is fading. Soon she will be mine completely. Trade now or lose her forever. My voice cracked. What happens if I take her place? Her head tilted, as if amused by the question. Then you will know what it is to stand behind the glass, to watch but never touch, to be seen but never free. The thought clawed into me. Eternal silence, eternal watching. But Miyako's eyes begged me. The house shuddered. I fell to my knees. The board split beneath me, red seeping upward, staining my palms. And again I woke. By the third night, I was too weak to fight it. I lay on the futon, clutching the notebook to my chest, and whispered, "If it must be me, then let it be." When I opened my eyes, I was already in the house. The mirror glowed faintly, brighter than before. Miyako stood within, her form flickering as though slipping away. Akane's pale hands caressed her face, her smile triumphant. "Time is ending," she whispered. "Choose." I staggered forward, my body trembling. My reflection warped, splitting. Half me, half her. Miyako's mouth moved desperately. "Don't, don't." Her eyes burned with something that shattered me. Not only fear, but love. She didn't want me to trade. She wanted me to live. But how could I leave her behind? I pressed my hands to the glass. "Take me. Let her go." The mirror rippled. Akan's laughter swelled, low and hollow. The house shook violently. Shadows curled along the walls, rushing toward the mirror. My reflection vanished entirely, replaced by her face. Miyako screamed soundlessly, her body dragged deeper into the dark. Akane's voice thundered in my skull. "So be it." I woke on the floor of Miyako's room, clawing at the tatami. My chest heaved, my body drenched in sweat and mud. The box sat open on the desk, its melody dying into silence. And behind me, in the mirror's faint reflection, I swore I saw her. Not Miyako, me. My own face, pale and empty, staring back as though from the other side of the glass. The sleepwalking didn't stop. Each night I drifted closer to that house. Each night the mirror demanded more. The boundary between dream and waking dissolved entirely. I began to lose track of time. Sometimes I found myself standing in streets I didn't remember walking. Sometimes I awoke with scratches on my arms, with hair tangled around my fingers, with mud thick on my feet. Each time the box sat waiting, its lid open, its gears turning. And always the whisper, "Switch, switch, switch." By the end of the week, I no longer feared the bargain. Fear had given way to resignation, because the truth was clear. The house, the mirror, the box. They would not let Miyako go. Unless I took her place, she would vanish into Akane's smile forever. And maybe that was always the music's design. Not a curse, a choice, but a choice that left no one whole. The night of the final call came without warning. I collapsed onto the futon, too weary to resist, and when my eyes opened again, I was already standing before the mirror. Miyako's form was barely visible now, her face pale, her body dissolving into shadow. Akane stood behind her, radiant in her hunger, her eyes locked onto mine, her smile wide. Last chance, trade, or watch her vanish. The house trembled. The mirror pulsed like a living heart. Miyako's lips shaped my name one last time. I stepped forward. I could no longer tell if I was awake or dreaming. Every corner of Kyoto felt like a mirror waiting to catch me. Windows, puddles, polished steel on the side of vending machines. Each one shimmered with her shadow. The nights dragged me back to the wooden house, to the bleeding tatami, to Miyako's eyes pleading behind the glass. And every time Akane whispered the same word, "Switch." By then, I knew resisting would not save either of us. If I wanted to keep Miyako from vanishing completely, I had to turn somewhere older than the curse itself, somewhere that still remembered the weight of prayer. So I climbed the mountain path to the temple. The stone steps rose endlessly, slick with moss, lanterns lining the way like hollow eyes. I carried the box pressed to my chest, wrapped in a cloth I knew could not contain it. Even so, it trembled faintly, as if alive, as if eager to hear what the priest would say. At the top, the temple loomed. Its roof sagged with age, tiles cracked and worn, yet incense drifted faintly from within. The scent was sharp, bitter, but steady, as though it had been burning for centuries without pause. A bell hung at the gate. I rang it once. The sound echoed like a heartbeat swallowed by the mountain. The priest appeared. He was old, older than anyone I had ever seen. His back bowed, his hands thin as bones wrapped in skin. His eyes, though, were clear, sharper than any mirror I had feared. "You brought it here," he said before I spoke. My throat tightened. "You know it?" He nodded once. "That box has walked these mountains many times. It returns when it is not satisfied. You are not the first to carry it." The words hollowed me. "My sister, Miyako. She's inside. The woman in white has her." His gaze did not waver. "Akane." The name curdled in the air, heavy as smoke. I clutched the box tighter. "Tell me how to free her." The priest turned, leading me into the temple. Candles lined the hall, their flames bending in unison as if bowing. The statues of bodhisattvas stared with expressions unreadable, both merciful and merciless. At the altar, the priest finally spoke. "There is a rite, an old one. It may break her hold, or it may only bind you faster. Once begun, it cannot be undone." I swallowed, my voice raw. "What does it require?" He looked at me then, truly looked, as though weighing the marrow of my soul. "When the melody plays its last time, only one spirit may walk out, yours or hers." The air left my lungs. "So either Miyako returns, or I do." The priest nodded slowly. "There is no path where you both leave free." Silence pressed heavy. The candles flickered. The box trembled in my arms as if mocking my despair. The priest lit sticks of incense, the smoke curling upward like fragile souls. His voice dropped, low, steady. "Prepare yourself. The rite will call her. When it begins, do not falter. Hold your sister if you mean to save her. But know this, spirits cling tighter than the living. If you lose your grip, she will take you both." His words seared into me. Miyako's face flashed in my memory, her laughter, her stubbornness, her pale reflection begging me from the mirror. I tightened my grip on the box. "I'll do it." That night the ritual began. The priest set the box on the altar. Candles burned in a ring, their flames bending inward. Bells chimed faintly, though no hands touched them. He began to chant. The words rolled low, ancient syllables I could not understand but felt in my bones. The air thickened, shadows lengthening across the temple walls. The box rattled. Its lid creaked open. The melody spilled out, jagged and sorrowful, rising louder than ever before. The priest's chant grew harsher, faster. Sweat streaked his face, though his voice did not waver. And then, the mirror appeared. Not one of glass, but a sheet of water forming in the air, rippling, glowing faintly. Within it, Miyako. She reached toward me, her lips shaping my name. Tears streaked her pale face. Behind her, Akane loomed. Her white kimono glowed, her smile wide, triumphant. The melody shrieked. I rushed forward, pressing my palms to the surface of the mirror water. It froze my skin, but I didn't care. Miyako pressed back, her fingers brushing mine. The priest's voice thundered, "Only one soul may leave." Akan's voice slithered beneath it. "Choose, Riku, trade, or watch her vanish forever." My body trembled. My heart split. Miyako's lips mouthed, "Don't." But her eyes begged, "Save me." The melody reached its peak, the gears grinding until they screamed. The mirror rippled violently, pulling us both closer. I clutched her wrists. "I won't let you go." Akan's pale hands wrapped around us, her grip cold as iron. She pulled, her strength endless. The priest's chant shook the walls. The candles guttered, nearly snuffed out. And in that chaos, I realized, if I pulled harder, I could take Miyako back. But if I faltered even once, she would drag us both into the dark. The air filled with voices, thousands, screaming, laughing, weeping. The temple groaned. Miyako cried my name. Akane whispered hers, and I pulled. The mirror split with a sound like thunder. Light poured through, blinding, searing. For a moment I felt her weight in my arms, warm, fragile, real. Miyako. But in the same breath I felt something else. Cold fingers, pressing against my back. A smile brushing the nape of my neck. Akane's voice curled in my ear. "Then it is you." The light shattered. The mirror collapsed. The box slammed shut on the altar. Silence swallowed the temple. When I opened my eyes, Miyako lay before me, her chest rising in shallow breaths. Alive. I reached out with trembling hands, whispering her name. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open, dazed, confused. But hers, truly hers. Tears burned my eyes. Relief shook me. But then from the corner of my vision, the mirror's surface still shimmered faintly. And within it, I saw myself, my face pale and hollow, staring back from the other side. The temple was silent after the rite, too silent. Miyako lay on the tatami floor of the altar room, her breaths shallow, fragile. I knelt beside her, touching her face to make sure she was real. Warmth lingered beneath her skin. She was alive. But the mirror betrayed me. In its faint surface, I saw myself, standing still, pale as bone, eyes hollow. My reflection did not move with me. It only stared, lips curved into a shadow of a Khan's smile. The priest's voice broke the silence. His breath rattled, his body trembling from the strain of the ritual. "It is not over." I turned toward him, my voice cracking. "She's here. I saved her." His eyes glimmered with sorrow. "One soul was freed, the other is bound. The music has yet to play its last." The words fell heavy, pulling me into a truth I had tried not to face. The box sat on the altar, its lid shut, its surface gleaming faintly in the candlelight. But I could hear it, a low hum, almost imperceptible, as though the gears turned deep inside themselves. Waiting. The priest staggered to his feet. "The final melody will come. It cannot be stopped, only endured." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to force him to undo it, but I knew already. There was no undoing. The box did not forgive. It only traded. Miyako stirred beside me. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, glassy. "Riku." I gripped her hand tightly, tears stinging. "I'm here. You're safe." But even as I said it, the reflection in the mirror smiled wider. That night, the storm returned. Wind tore at the temple walls. Rain hammered the tiles. Candles guttered, their flames bowing low as though in fear. And the box opened. No hand touched it. The lid lifted slowly, deliberately. The key spun. The melody poured into the room. Not fragile this time. Not sweet, but sharp, violent. A song broken into jagged pieces. The notes scraped across my skin like blades, forcing shivers down my spine. The priest fell to his knees, chanting, his voice hoarse. But the song drowned him out, rising louder, heavier, until it filled every corner of the temple. The mirror shimmered. Akane emerged, not only in reflection this time. She stepped halfway through, her body pale, her kimono soaked with shadows that bled into the floor. Her eyes gleamed with triumph. Behind her, the void seethed. Shapes writhed, faces, hands, fragments of those who had already traded before me. Sayuri's pale form flickered there, eyes wide with endless pleading. Miyako clutched my arm, her body shaking. "Don't look, Riku. Don't." But I couldn't look away. Akane's smile split wider. Her voice seeped from the song itself. "Only one soul leaves." The pull began. My body leaned forward against my will, dragged toward the mirror. My reflection reached for me, its hollow eyes wide, its hands pale, waiting. I dug my nails into the tatami, gasping. No, not me. Not yet. Miyako clung to me, her tears hot against my shoulder. Don't, Riku, please. Don't leave me again. But the song coiled tighter, wrapping around my chest, my throat, my very breath. My body shook violently, every bone screaming. I could feel Akani's hands at my back, cold, insistent. And in that instant I understood. There was no choice left. It had always been me. I turned to Miyako, forcing my voice steady, though it trembled. Listen to me. Whatever happens, live. Do you hear me? Live. She shook her head violently, gripping me tighter. No, I won't let you. The melody shrieked. The mirror cracked. Shadows surged forward. I wrenched my hand free and shoved her toward the priest. Take her! Get her out! Miyako screamed my name. The priest dragged her back, chanting louder, his voice breaking. And then the mirror consumed me. Cold swallowed me whole. My body stiffened, my breath stolen. The world blurred into silver, into shadow, into silence. I tried to scream, but no sound carried. My hands pressed against glass, smooth and unyielding. On the other side I saw them, Miyako, the priest, the temple fading. She reached for me, sobbing. Her lips formed my name again and again, but I was already gone. Akani stood beside me. Her pale form gleamed in the void, her smile triumphant. She leaned close, whispering into my ear, "Now you understand." I turned toward her, rage burning even in despair. Why her? Why me? Her eyes glimmered. Because betrayal must always be repaid. A brother leaves, a sister suffers, a man leaves, a woman dies. Such is the song. Her laughter rippled through the void. I struck at the glass, pounding until my hands bled. But the surface did not break. It only reflected my hollow face, my eyes already dimming. On the other side, Miyako screamed. The melody reached its end. One last note hung in the air, long and sharp, before cutting off into silence. The box shut with a final click. When the silence lifted, I was no longer in the temple. I stood behind Miyako. She trembled, clutching the priest, her face pale with horror. She could not see me, not truly, but I felt her warmth, her breath, her presence, and I knew. I was the shadow now, the figure behind her shoulder, the one the music had claimed. The temple doors opened to dawn. I watched from behind her shoulder as Miyako stepped out, led by the priest's trembling hand. The morning light washed her pale face, her breath still unsteady. She blinked into the sunlight as though it hurt, as though her body had forgotten the warmth of this world. She was alive, but I was not with her. I followed still, my steps soundless, my body weightless. The distance between us was no distance at all. Wherever she walked, I was only one pace behind. The music box had claimed me. At first I thought perhaps there was mercy in it. I could still see her, still hear the faint sound of her breath, still feel the warmth of her presence. She would never know loneliness again, because I would always be near. But as the day stretched on, I realized the truth. She could not see me, not fully. Sometimes her body shivered, her shoulders tightening as though she felt breath at her neck. Sometimes she turned sharply, glancing at empty air. Once she even whispered my name under her breath, a question without an answer. But when her eyes passed over me, they slid away. To her, I was no more than the weight of a shadow, the chill of a room with no open window. The priest gave her charms, talismans, words of comfort. He did not look at me, though I know he sensed I was there. His gaze lingered on the mirror at the altar, and the sorrow in his eyes told me everything. Only one soul had left. I was not that soul. The days blurred. Miyako tried to return to her life. She went back to her room in Kyoto, folding clothes, boiling water, pressing ink to paper. She lit incense for the friends who had vanished, Sayuri among them. But each night, when the lamp flickered and the room grew quiet, I saw her shoulders stiffen. I saw her glance into the mirror by the desk, her eyes widening as though she almost recognized me. And each night I leaned closer, one breath behind her, one step away. The shadow in the glass. The box never left. She tried to bury it, burn it, cast it into rivers. Each time it returned, on her desk, in her bag, once even resting beside her pillow when she woke. The melody did not always play. Sometimes it waited, patient. Sometimes days passed in silence, almost enough for her to believe she was free. But I knew. It was only waiting for me to stir again, because I was bound to it, bound to her, bound to the song. In the quiet hours, I tried to reach her. I whispered her name, pressed my hands against the glass whenever she glanced at her reflection. Sometimes I thought she heard me. Her eyes would widen, her lips part, and she would whisper back, "Riku?" But the moment she blinked, I was gone again, nothing more than a cold breath against her skin. The woman in white had kept her promise. I had traded. Miyako lived, and I was the one behind the glass. One evening she lit a lantern and carried the box to the old temple. She placed it on the altar, her hands trembling, her lips moving in a prayer I could not hear. The priest was gone, perhaps dead, perhaps vanished like so many others. Only silence answered her. She wept quietly, pressing her forehead to the tatami, her shoulders shaking. And I stood behind her, powerless, the shadow, the watcher, the reminder. When she lifted her head again, she whispered, "I know you're there." My hollow chest ached. Tears I could no longer shed burned inside me. "Yes," I whispered, though she could not hear. She turned toward the mirror by the altar. For an instant, our eyes met, truly met. Her breath caught, and then she looked away, shivering. I thought that might be the end of it, that I would linger in this half-world forever, watching, never touching. But the box had one more cruelty left. Weeks later, Miyako tried to start again. She moved to a new apartment, a brighter place, with neighbors, with sunlight streaming through the windows. She laughed sometimes, though it was brittle, a laugh built on broken bones. Then one night, she sat at her new desk, writing by lamplight. Her hand brushed against something. The box. It sat there, black lacquer gleaming, its key waiting. Her face drained of color. She reached for it with trembling hands, perhaps to throw it away, perhaps to lock it in a drawer. And without warning, the lid opened. The melody began. My body stiffened. The song thrummed through me, each note a command. In the mirror, the woman in white appeared once more. Her smile stretched wide, her eyes triumphant. She looked not at Miyako this time. She looked at me. "It never ends," she whispered. I reached toward Miyako, desperate, shouting words she could not hear. But she only sat frozen, her hand hovering above the box, tears spilling down her cheeks. The mirror rippled, and for the first time since I had traded places, I felt another presence behind me. I turned. There she was, Akane. Her face leaned close, her breath cold against my neck. "Move aside," she hissed. "There is always another shadow." Her laughter coiled around me. The melody sharpened, louder, endless. Miyako sobbed, and I realized the cruelest truth of all. I was not only the shadow behind her, I was trapped in the same chain that had claimed Akane, that had claimed countless others before me. The music did not free, it replaced. And so, I wait. Behind Miyako's reflection, behind her every step, behind the trembling flicker of her lamp. I wait as the song winds itself again and again. One day, perhaps, she too will make the same choice I did. And then I will no longer be the shadow. She will. The melody plays on, and I am always here, behind her. Thanks for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting stories.